for sound.
Good evening and welcome to episode 9 of Sugar and Silk, brought to you exclusively from San Antonio, Texas, featuring myself, Ben Doughty.
And myself, Michael Silk Olajide.
And last but not least, Mike
Ayala.
Miguel.
See,
Miguel Ayala.
We're still a complete shambles at this, because my concept, I don't mind discussing this in front of the ladies, the millions of viewers, around the world.
Yeah, of course.
My concept was I just introduce myself, you introduce yourself, then I introduce Mike, but none of us are quite sure what we're doing. Regardless of that, we came here to talk boxing, gentlemen. Let's start with Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin and the controversy that has sprang from the decision last night, because I believe you were there, Silk.
I was right there, Jerry Cooney right in front of me, and I thought the fight was I thought the kid fought in reverse a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? As long as the aggressor is able to counter and catch him. And I kind of thought he did. I didn't really see or feel the controversy. Maybe seeing it, being there live and being there or being there and watching it on TV are different mediums altogether. So you'll get a different appreciation of the fight.
Yeah, so it came as a surprise to you when you heard about the kind of fallout from the decision, and people, even Ryan Garcia saying it was a disgrace and all the rest of it. That came as a surprise to you, having been there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any way in heaven that it was a disgrace. I mean, either way, I could see I didn't even see any rounds up for controversy except for the knockdown. That was a legitimate knockdown. That right hook, was it a right hook counter, left hook counter when Teofimo came in and he rushed forward and he caught him off the top of the head. Those are hard shots to get hit with, right, Miguel?
Yeah, exactly. I thought on the replay I was seeing it on TV, he grazed him. It didn't really it was a solid shot. It didn't look like it to me anyway.
Yeah.
But it did make contact.
Yes, it did.
But like you were saying, I didn't think it was a big controversy because Lopez was putting pressure. He was chasing him all night, trying to make the fight. I thought he won.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I thought, or it could have been a good draw. But I thought through our boxing experience, I think you'll agree with me. If the aggressive you're the aggressor trying to make the fight, and the other one is just running all night and just defensive trying to survive, it's hard to look good against a fighter like that.
I think there's the distinction you made, Silk, between you don't mind a guy who wants to box going backwards if he's doing it effectively and he's committed to that game plan. But if he is more survival orientated and simply what they call running, then it's quite another matter.
Yeah, he did. He did actually do that. And you know what the knockdown reminded me of? It reminded me of when Sugar Ray caught Benitez off the top of the head.
Yeah.
Except southpaws, they do that really cute counter. It's beautiful when you reach in, they can catch you off the top of the head. But when Sugar Ray dropped Benitez, I almost didn't. I was so young at the time. I didn't know you could really knock somebody down off the top of the head. It was unique. I always thought it had to be at the chin or side of the head. But it's really sensitive up and around the brain, the temples, for instance, and off the back of the head behind the ear. It's very, very sensitive. And so I knew right away when he caught him good. The kid got buzzed. But after that, before that and after that, I didn't really see a lot coming back from him.
Is it fair to say that it was, regardless of it being a deserved win in your opinion and in Mike's opinion, and I've got to be honest, I didn't really see it enough to score it because we were watching 2 cards at the same time last night at Mike's place. We had the BLK Prime Terence Crawford Avenetian bill on the big TV. We had the other card, the Lopez card, on his lady wife's phone, and it was also playing in another room in the house, in a kind of auxiliary lounge TV room you have.
Exactly.
So we're not obsessed or anything like that. We don't have a problem. But because that was the thing, as soon as Avenetian got knocked out, Mike said, "Okay, now let's go in this room and finish watch the last 2 rounds of Lopez on the big screen instead."
It's pugilistic ADD or something. You can go there.
Well, I was going to say, I was tempted to post last night. You might think you're boxing obsessed, but are you at Mike Ayala's house watching 2 fights on your 3 different screens? Well, and if not, then shut up, quite frankly. But the point being, I couldn't score it, to be honest with you. I was relying on Mike's updates while I was mostly focusing on the card in Omaha. and then I saw the last 2 rounds of it. But the point being that, is it fair to say at least, it sounds like a phone ringing, is it fair to say at least that it wasn't the most impressive or convincing performance from Lopez? And how do you feel about his trajectory from this point going forward?
I think that what that fight shows were definitely his limitations. See, because it's also, no matter what, you may not have a willing opponent, but if you are so dominant, you find a way to get him out of there. You find a way to make your opponent look bad. Now, it may not be the style that it's a style that contradicts with your ability. It conflicts with your ability. I absolutely understand that. But to be a complete fighter, you have to be able to get rid of those fighters and look good in those kind of days. I mean, look, Duran had those problems too, and guys got up on their bike and ran. It's just like, you know what I mean? Duran didn't always get him out of there, but you know, that's just one of the ways of measuring a fight.
It's hard because see, when you fight a fighter that doesn't really want to win one just to survive, he doesn't want to. He doesn't make you look good.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't leave himself open.
Exactly. Once you take him a good shot or he feels your power, all they do is run, hold, and stuff. And it's frustrating as you go and stuff. And sometimes you can make a mistake and stuff. Yeah. But I agree with you. I thought Lopez did enough to win, and you know, with the circumstance, because sometimes it would be ideal in a perfect world if you had a fighter that comes in and engages with you, and you know, it would be. But like they say, styles make boxing, and boxing makes, you know what I mean? It's you know, it's what you get with an opponent.
Yeah. Well, the matchmaker didn't make any points himself last night.
No. Is Lopez, where does Lopez go for me, and how well do you think he'll do for me? Because obviously when he was riding the crest of a wave, being undefeated and having beaten Vasily Lomachenko, who was getting compared to the likes of Willie Pep and Sugar Ray Robinson prior to that, you would have had the highest hopes for his future, and you know, commercially and otherwise. How do you feel about how much of a factor and how he's going to be in the game now, and how successful he's going to be going forward?
Yeah, he's a big kid for his division. He was a lightweight. He was huge. Now he's junior welterweight, right? And I believe that this division is kind of like it's not a very exciting division, the junior welterweight division, from what I understand, which isn't the biggest. I don't have the most knowledge on junior welterweight divisions or any of the divisions these days, but where the action is like lightweight and welterweight. So he's going to have to make a decision and not, you know, go in between. He's big enough to fight at welterweight, obviously, but you know, the guys are bigger, they hit harder, and the talent is much, much more vast.
It's the hotter division. So talking of that, or did you have a point you wanted to make?
Yeah, on the contrary, I think there's some big money fights. The rematch of Lomachenko and Lopez, or if Ryan Garcia beats Gervonta Davis, that's a good matchup too. Lopez against Ryan Garcia,
but at lightweight,
Davis against Lopez. I think those fights are interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. But I thought they were like at lightweight fights. Now he's at junior welterweight.
Well, they're fighting 140.
Ryan Garcia would go to 140 definitely. I don't think he can do lightweight so easy anymore, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I personally, I don't see how Tank makes it either, but I don't know, these guys.
Yeah, and I think,
legs.
So far as I know, what catch weight did they say that Tank versus Garcia will be made at? Was it something like 136? Was it?
Really? Did they, but not for the lightweight title. It's just a fight. It's a 10.
What lightweight title? You know, we have almost as many titles as we have genders in the modern landscape. You know, I don't know. So honestly, I'm not being willfully facetious. I genuinely lose track. Yeah. We've been talking a lot about boxing these last few days, inevitably, and often Michael say, "Well, the guy was, you know, he was good. He deserves his props. He was a world champion." And I've been talking to him about how that's lost a lot of its resonance for me in this era. So I think the important thing is when you get it to guys, marquee fighters of marvelous ability like Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia, what matters is they make the fight, and and they, you know, they produce a great fight. That's more important than what the kind of hardware billing attached to it will be.
Who do you like in that fight, guys? Who do you like?
I like. I tend to side with Davis, even though he's the smaller guy. I tend to side with Gervonta. I just think he's more experienced. I think he's more tested. I think he's overall a better fighter. I think he carries his power up with him wherever he goes, and that's why I fancy Tank. But I know that Mike begs to differ.
Yeah, I love Ryan Garcia. I love his height. I love he's he blends. You know what I mean? I think it's gonna be a good fight. If he fights fights tall, like yourself, fights tall, keeps his distance. He can control Davis because Davis is pretty short, and if he takes his advantage, but sometimes in a fight things change. Headbutt, cut, you know what I mean.
A lot of the unforeseeable
injury happens, and the fight, it turns, or he might get caught because one thing I do respect about Gervonta Davis, he can bang. And when you fight a banger, they can change the fight at any time.
He showed against Leo Santa Cruz, with that.
Leo Santa Cruz. And how about Riley Romero?
Yes, same thing, exactly the same syndrome.
And his reflexes, Garcia's reflexes, I think, are going to be the biggest problem for Tank. Because he is long. Yes, he is long. He's tall, and he throws his punches. He fights everything like he can get good distance.
Right.
And he's got respectable power, more than respectable power, and his reflexes. So it's really, you can't make too many mistakes against a guy like that.
And the important thing, also too, when he fought Luke Campbell, he got caught.
Yeah.
And he got up. So it shows us that if he gets hurt by Davis, he can recuperate.
His capacity to get up. Although you have to say Campbell is not nearly the finisher
of the Davis's.
Davis level. You know what I mean? It's a different beast altogether. All of a sudden, you're being hunted by like the apex predator of the jungle. Is different than being hunted. You know what I mean?
I do agree with Mike, though, insofar as I think it was a bit of an acid test for Garcia, and I do think he has that X factor. You see some of the failings in him, defensively, and he's still a little green compared to presumably the fighter who's going to be one day. But I do think there's an X factor about Ryan Garcia and that special sort of extra something that a je ne sais quoi, as it were, about this fighter.
Yeah, but he really has it going on, and he's seen enough punches and he's seen enough guys in his time that he's not a novice. Like he's a tested commodity, and he's going to be all right. It's going to be a great fight. I think it's going to be a great fight for the public. So I'm glad it's happening because
Jeff Thompson, good evening, guys. Impossible to keep up nowadays with the titles. It means just keep hoping the best will eventually fight the best. I agree about Garcia. I think he may take Tank down the stretch. So that's an opinion from one of our viewers right now.
Yeah.
Moving on to you talk about the welterweight division by alluding to the fact that Lopez might be caught between two stools and needs to make a decision. Last night, I know that before the fight last night in Omaha, Nebraska, against the tough English-based Russian David Avanesyan, my friend here, Mike, was saying that he wasn't entirely 100% sold on Terence Crawford, particularly not with some people contending that he's the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world today. He's a believer now. He's going to tell you about that.
Oh, okay.
Because I haven't seen Crawford that close and with competition. Yesterday evening when we saw them, but I was seeing the fight from the beginning as a fighter, and Michael, when the fight's going on and the guy's giving you a little bit of problems, you're trying different things to see if they work.
Yeah.
But I saw Crawford yesterday. He was trying to get that uppercut in, but couldn't really quite get it in. But he kept on. He was persistent. And another thing too, what a lot of fighters do, they only throw one shot. He was throwing combinations, and that impressed me. And when he caught the fighter with because he's a southpaw. Right uppercut. No, it wasn't.
It was left uppercut.
Left uppercut, right hook. Yeah, and I get confused because I'm right-handed. And and right hook. It was a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
And he finished them off with the combination.
Yeah.
You saw that, right, Silk?
Yeah, I saw the fight. I was incredibly impressed by Crawford, but I've always been a fan of his because I just like his fistic intelligence. You know what I mean? He just has very intelligent hands. Like you saw what he was doing when the first couple of rounds, and he's giving ground, but he's not giving ground without testing. He's putting shots out there that aren't
without
really
texting. Yeah, without texting. You said he's not giving ground without texting. Did you say?
Oh yeah, uncontested. He isn't
Yeah,
getting like, yeah, you know what I mean. I wish I developed a new saying like that, but
I thought it was. I thought it was like a silk phrase. I thought there's another one of those. Yeah, I like it. He was giving ground, but he was texting all the time. Come on, Tim Bradley likes some funny
well,
phrases.
let's just say I did say that. Let's say I did say that. I can go with
Cool.
that.
Go
But
on.
yeah. So what he was doing, like he was always like sticking a stiff jab or whatever punch he was throwing, and he was almost like not punching and pulling it back. He was placing the heaviness of his hands on him to make him aware of his presence, to make this kid aware that if he gets hit, you know what I mean, he's gonna feel it. And the kid was coming in with his hands up high and covering everything up, and
He was
as you
catching
know,
a lot of shots in the arms. Right.
that's one of the hardest defenses to go up against, right? When a guy covers his ribs and covers his face and he's tight and he's got everything in tight and you have to try to punch your way through or punch around and you have to anticipate when they're going to punch so you can, because when his hand leaves his body, that's when the opening is there. When it comes back, it's gone.
Evanesian too is very unorthodox and very high energy.
Yeah.
He put on a lot of pressure. You notice the way he was switching stances at pivotal moments to launch just a shot here and there. Particularly, he was a big fan of coming in like this, like you say, bit of lateral movement, changing his levels. Then he'd switch southpaw and sling a left hand from the backhand position quite frequently. I thought he caught Crawford a whole lot in the early rounds, and I do really commend David Evanesian for approaching that with total self-belief. If you're going to lose, there's more honor for me in losing to the best in the world like that than there is in some kind of belt grab scenario where you've maneuvered yourself into a position of false glory by playing that game. You know, I don't know how much David Evanesian got paid last night. I know Crawford allegedly got 10 million, but I thought it was a fantastic showing for David Evanesian. And if that's the way you're going to go out like that.
Yeah, 100% respect for him. You cannot, take anything away from him. He came there to fight. He came there slinging. It's like you or me, and that's all there is to it. He put himself on the line, and that's what the fans want to see. Doesn't matter how it's done, as long as you're giving 100% of yourself. That could be appreciated. I love the way Crawford calculated as he moves. Like he doesn't start thinking he wants to punch and then starts punching when the opportunity comes. He's always making opportunity for himself. Like if an opponent throws, he has a counter for that. If the opponent's not throwing, he's doing work to create that opening for himself. So he's on 100% of the time. You'll find a lot of fighters, they'll throw some punches, then they'll get up on their toes and they'll move to get a break, or they'll, shuck and jive and look around. And many fighters do that. But Crawford, what I love about him, he's always in striking range, whether to be struck or to strike back. And that's why his fights, that's why I see it. I look at him and I'm going to say, this guy's just unusual. He's really,
is he
greatness what he's doing.
Is he the best pound for pound fighter in the world today? You first.
I have for my top three, he's pound for pound, yes. And I go that strictly not on, obviously you can't say he's fought all of the best opposition he can, but it's strictly based on his ability, his like the talent, his instinct, his knowing how difficult it is to do the things that he does and makes them look so easy. Those are some of the reasons why I vote him as pound for pound one of the best. And then I would have to say I would say Beterbiev would be my second.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You want to tell us the third before we move on?
My third would be Usyk.
Usyk.
Yeah.
So first question, Mike, do you regard Crawford as the best pound for pound fighter in the world or somebody else?
No, I think so. I think so.
Yeah. You didn't think that until last night.
So until last night, because I saw like Michael was saying, when he had his hands, Crawford figured it out coming right down the middle, between the high guard, and that's why he started catching with the uppercut.
Yeah.
And I would say Crawford. I like Crawford. I like. I would have loved to see Errol Spence and Crawford. That would have been a good matchup.
Yeah,
and that's the fight they're trying to make. Jeff Thompson, who's been making some comments during this
Right.
podcast, has said that he grudgingly admits now that Crawford probably would beat Spence. He's a huge Errol Spence fan. I think we still need to see the fight regardless, because that's, like you say, that's ultimately how great.
Well, yeah. Well, like Michael was saying, fighters should. What's happening? They're making it too commercial. And the old days, good fighters would fight good fighters, and that's how you distinguish.
Yeah.
You know. Right now, what's happening is that the battling promotions and stuff make things difficult. Like what happened with the Ryan Garcia, Janante Davis, and Ranson, whatever. They make too many. Well, which referee they want? Where's the venue going to be?
And the argument about the network, which platform we stage on. That's a big sticking point sometimes.
Exactly. I want it on DNZ. I want it on Showtime. And if the bullfighters have different TV companies, well, that's another thing.
Absolutely. So, but the thing is, I would tend to agree that Crawford probably is the number one guy. I mean, that would be my take on it right now. Since you suggested the notion of a top three, I would say perhaps Naoya Inoue might be the second immediately behind him.
I have to take a look at him. I haven't seen him. His powers. Yeah, his power is legend, I guess. So I'm hearing a lot about it, but I haven't had the chance to see him yet.
There's a Japanese fighter called Naoya Inoue. They call him the Monster. If you haven't seen him,
he's a flyweight.
He was a flyweight, then he was a super flyweight, then he was a bantamweight. Right now, he's Englishman Paul Butler from Liverpool kind of way, Ellesmere Port, is fighting him next time out. I don't know what the date is. I don't know if it's January or I don't know if it's before the end of the year. But Paul Butler is thought to be on a kind of a suicide mission, perhaps even worse than Evanesian was perceived last night. If Evanesian had won last night, I think it might have been a Hunnigan-Curry kind of level thing. But Butler, anyway, if he was somehow to get that result, and fair play for him for taking the fight and taking on the best in the world once again, as did Avanesian last night, then I think it might even be even more of a shocker than the Hunnigan-Curry scenario.
I mean, that was just like a world rocker. That was insane.
I want to tell you before we forget to mention it that we're gonna see if we can hook up with Donald Curry next week in Fort Worth. We're going to make a trip to Fort Worth. We can't guarantee anything, but if we'd like to go and say hi if he's available, and we've put some feelers out, and that would be that'd be pretty phenomenal for me if it comes off.
We have some pretty. I know we definitely have some very interesting guests lined up that we're going to love. So
yeah, we can't get Curry on the podcast because we're going to Fort Worth on Tuesday, but I will get something.
Yeah. Oh, sweet. I'd love to hear it. He was an amazing fighter. He was, a hero to all fighters when he was coming up. Really, you looked at him, and he's one of those kinds of fighters that made you looked at him and you say, I want to do that. You know what I mean? Like there's certain moves he made. His knockout over Mil McCrory. Every fighter, once he slipped a jab and came back with the left hook and caught him on the chin, you're in the gym the next day trying to make that your move.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To me, at that age, I was so impressionable. That was my thing.
Absolutely. When I say, to me, the chilling thing was when he dismantled Colin Jones, who was a tough elite puncher who'd given Milton McCrory hell in two WBC title challenges, vacant title challenges. And then when he got a shot against Curry for the WBA title in January 1985 in Birmingham, England, there was something just so utterly chilling and surgical about the way Curry took him apart, like he was nothing, like a hot knife through butter. And like you just said, Michael, I was all Sugar Ray Leonard and Muhammad Ali. That was my whole focus in terms of any kind of imitation kind of homage went that way. But for a little while after seeing Curry do that to Colin Jones, I was suddenly trying to experiment with this more Cobra-like style of just movement until you needed it, being more aggressive and one, like you say, it was that feeling of I want to do that.
No, absolutely. He had that beautiful style. And before we get off Crawford, I did want to say that when I think of past fighters that he reminds me of, he kind of reminds me of Mayweather, but without the hyper defense.
Yeah, funny enough, Scoop Malinowski, who's a fairly controversial journalist that some people regard him as a fruitcake. I know Randy Gordon recently banned him from his page because he finally.
Oh really? Oh no!
Yeah, He actually met. Well, I won't share the message, but he made me aware of the fact he'd chosen to ban Scoop, and I said, "Well, I'm going to hang in there," because he was loyal to me when the whole world was calling me worse than Hitler back at 6 years ago. So,
Wait, worse than Hitler? What did you do?
Did you never hear about this? There was a whole kind of Ticketgate scandal back in 2016 when I was spinning a lot of plates. I was drinking alcoholically at the time. And I just got myself in trouble with money, and I was one project behind myself constantly. I took a load of money for tickets for the Kell Brook Gennady Golovkin fight without knowing for sure if I could get the tickets. And I also had an arrangement with the man I used to get tickets off, where he might not see me for a few weeks, and I'd have more time to get some more money and settle up. So I might use the money that had been paid to pay off other existing things like Bruno's deposit or Nigel Benn's deposit or whatever it was for the that I was running. Long story short, there was like £7,500 worth of ticket money taken, and neither the money nor the tickets were remotely forthcoming. I kind of disappeared off social media for a week while I just drank and.
Oh my Lord, I'm sorry.
Kind of bottom situation, and a lot of people were just saying, what a scumbag. He's the scum of the earth, and he's built up all this confidence over these years just to pull off this kind of great big confidence trick. People grossly exaggerated the amounts of money were involved. I'd stolen $100,000, and I was living an idle life of illegally subsidized luxury in Monte Carlo. Was the story, So you couldn't make it up. Well, you could make it up because they did make it up. Anyway, while people were saying this is terrible, and even the most pro Doughty people were saying this does sound bad. I got to admit, this sounds pretty bad. And Scoop Malinowski just said, "Nah, I like Ben Doughty." And I've never quite forgotten that. You know what I mean? Even as crazy as he is, I've never forgotten that. But regardless, he said that Crawford is way better than Floyd ever was, which I don't know about that.
Floyd's a lot of flash, and but the thing is that Crawford has fought good opponents, and I like his workmanship. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The way he works, the way, you know what I mean? Like you said, Michael, not a lot of flash, not a lot of talking. He just goes. And he gets to work and does what he has to do to win. He makes it simple.
Yeah, he does. He simplifies, and that's what I like to say. Like, Floyd will do hyper defense until he feels comfortable. He's got the measure of his opponent, and then he'll start taking risks, and then he start moving his hands. So he'll give away the first 2-3 rounds. If a person is really talented, he'll give away the first 2, 3, 4 rounds, and then he'll start to finally put hands on him after 4 or 5 rounds, and he'll win a decision and take the later rounds because of his superior conditioning and his fight intellect. But when it comes down to Crawford is immediately applying, his ability. And finding openings, and he doesn't just do defense. Like, it's more a crowd pleasing style, I guess I would have to say. Whereas Floyd's is a little more self-preservation,
which is strange in view of that, and it's definitely true. Why Mayweather became the big pay-per-view star that he did, and what it proves is it's actually your style and profile outside the ring which has a big effect on that, and a big effect on people partying with their hard-earned cash to watch you on pay-per-view. Because Floyd massively exploited social media. He said that the difference between him when he was with Ayala and being promoted by someone else to the days at his zenith when he was promoting himself and he was using social media to its ultimate degree, he said was like night and day financially and everything else. So.
Social media was still just growing then, right? When Floyd was, it didn't play that much of a.
He spanned the era, but by the time he was in the 2010s, certainly by the time he fought Pacquiao in 2015, social media was absolutely ablaze.
And he said that point, yes.
He said that was the night and day. He said, that once. He said if he'd had social media from the start of his career, he would have been boxing's first billionaire. That's his opinion, supposedly. I've heard that quote.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
To me, what earned my respect for Floyd Mayweather, and people haven't talked about this fight, but I thought what he showed, and I think what made him, was I don't remember if you remember the fight when he fought Shane Mosley, where Shane Mosley almost knocked him out. Hurt him. And, he regained himself and got his composure back. Yeah. And he came back to win. That's a great champion. When you get a fight, any fighter that could get stunned like that and change it around and come back to win, he has something.
Yeah,
for sure.
No doubt about it. Like, there's no denying Floyd's ability, and the reason why we're talking about him now in these contexts is because the three of us agree that he is a great fighter. There's no doubt about that. I'm just saying, in terms of his fight style, wasn't the most pleasing of fight styles.
And you're an aficionado and a purist too. You're like a connoisseur, and you didn't find it the most pleasing.
Right, exactly, and I agree the same thing. I agree with you too, because you could make a fight boring.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And sometimes he plays it too safe.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Yeah, and sometimes you know it's just like I'm trying to think, like Sugar Ray Robinson. You got to take chances. If you want greatness, you guys. And Mayweather, I think Mayweather achieved what he wanted, he became to play too safe, picking his opponents and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
He had that model down, and he never fought out in Las Vegas in later years. And some people said that was because he needed to take lidocaine for his hands, and the Nevada Commission allowed it, whereas some other commissions didn't.
And then he made it a carnival, fighting other people like wrestlers and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You know, like fighting Conor McGregor and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I felt that, you know, me as a fighter and as yourself, you know, like he was downgrading our sport. You know what I mean? Making a carnival instead of, because boxing's serious. Boxing, you can lose your life.
Yeah, and there's lots of times, look, fighters, you give the opportunity to the fighters coming up. It's like fighters, it's almost like when you're a great fighter and you fight the guys that are in line, the great guys you're supposed to fight, because that's what happens. Like, you ate the champion before you, and then you become champ. Now you have to give that young guy the chance to eat you, so they can go on to become champion. That's just like the law of the jungle. That's the law of the
old concept. That is the old concept that boxing was essentially founded on, and it was, and the same thing as the schoolyard fight, and whoever's the cock of the year or the cock of the school. That is the logic we should always have, because that's what it is. But I remember Sugar Ray Leonard saying to me when I interviewed him about 10 years ago, when he said, "I believe it's more of a business thing today." He said it's gotten away from mano, you against me, the legacy. And even though he acknowledged he was fighting for mega millions himself, he still feels it was less the completely all-consuming force than it is today, where there is even so much more money on the table, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think Sugar Ray was also one of the first ones to, was he like to do catch weights and stuff like that?
It was kind of what it was with Donny Lalonde when he challenged Donny Lalonde in November 1988 for the WBC Light Heavyweight Championship. It was the start of the the super middleweight division, essentially, although it'd been around with Murray Sutherland, we were talking about him the other day. Murray Sutherland was the first super middleweight champion with the IBF version of that time, 1984. But the WBC had suddenly come around to that way of thinking, and they were offering a super middleweight title when they never had previously. So once it had become available, there was obviously, I don't know whose idea it was, but it was decided that Lalonde and Leonard will contest not only the WBC light heavyweight title, but also the inaugural WBC super middleweight title. Now, obviously, in order for that to be possible, they had to make the lower weight. Otherwise, you can't fight for a belt. So they had to make. A lot of fans have got a problem with it. I'm aware of that. You know, I don't have a problem with the idea if you're going to fight for two titles, you have to make the poundage of the lighter one. It would be a nonsense to suggest anything else. So that's slightly different to a catchweight. Okay, it's not exactly a catchweight. You're saying if I say I'm fighting you for a lightweight title,
but they fought for Donny Lalonde's light heavyweight title, right?
Yeah, they did.
And Donny had to make what weight?
168. And you know what? He came in more like a 164. He did too much sparring. He says he did too much road work. And when people say that Leonard dragged him down, you know, and was too cute about that and too manipulative, and it detracts from his achievement. Donny says no. He said I was fine at 168. He said I wasn't the biggest light heavyweight. He said my problem was coming in too low beneath 168, and he says that's on him. He doesn't blame Leonard for that, you know. But you could liken it to a catchweight, but it's not the same as a catchweight. Catchweight is in between two divisions. You find a poundage between it, right? Like 138. If a lightweight fights a light welterweight.
Next week, I'm going to try to get Donny on. I'm going to, my fellow Canadian, the Canuck.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get him on.
Let's do it. I mean, Donny's a great guy. I mean, Donny, I was saying actually, my best friends in boxing, I think, you know, that in terms of my best friendships with stars that I used to read about as a kid would be yourself.
Our Canadians.
Well, it would be yourself, this guy, Tim Witherspoon, and Donny Lalonde. That's my best friends in boxing.
Sweet.
That's thank you. You know, but moving on then, because the kind of final topic, as it were, because the other thing going on today is we're kind of socializing with Mike's in-laws. So
Yes.
I promised we wouldn't take forever over this one. I was thinking 45 minutes. Josh Warrington lost his IBF featherweight title in his native Leeds last night to a tough, unorthodox, rather ungainly Mexican called Luis Alberto Lopez. We saw the fight, and so I know what we thought about it individually. Did you see it, first of all, Michael?
I did not see it. No.
That's what I feared. That's why I said it.
Yeah.
The fight was shown on my right side.
Okay. Oh yeah. Is that what happened? Yeah. Okay.
It was shown on my right side. Yeah.
It's like the joke. I mean, because you were a little late logging in today. I said it's probably because he's only got one eye on the time. See, if you can.
That's a low blow. That's a low blow.
You know what? You say I know Ben. You may not know the same, but you go cha. I got a million of them.
If you can joke about it, then I can. No. Okay. Basically, the decision was fair enough. I was surprised, to be honest with you, because I expected the hometown fighter to get it anyway. As much as I don't approve of hometown advantage and you got to take the title from the champion, I expected all of those unwritten rules to apply last night, and I expected Warrington, who did finish strong in the last 2 rounds, I expected him to squeeze home. But quite refreshingly, they gave it to the away fighter, and Warrington as once again is no longer a world champion. That was his second reign as IBF featherweight champion. And that was that, he was kind of, here's what I thought, right, Michael? Knowing this guy fought Danny Lopez, over nearly 45 years ago for the WC featherweight title.
Yes,
and knowing around that time, the division was also populated with the likes of Sanchez and Pedrosa and Juan Laporte. Yeah. I looked at last night and I thought it was absolutely amateur night, quite honestly. It was almost like the Ebony Bridges, Shannon O'Connell fight, but with more power. And and I just wonder how we've come to this, where that and I think it's
Ben, quickly, I would have to say that it's the lack of talent coming out of the amateurs that's causing the dearth of professional boxers today. You see all the guys that were champions in the I don't know 70s or especially the 80s and the 90s. They're coming from extensive amateur backgrounds. You look at the Russian fighters and the Eastern European fighters today. Those guys that are good, they have had 200-300 amateur fights, and they're starting off in their single-digit years. They're not starting as amateurs in their late teens. These guys are starting when they're like 7, 8, 9, and they're getting their hands together and they're learning. They're not getting hurt because you can't get hurt as a 7, 8-year-old, but you're getting your skills down and you're working that out. So by the time you turn a pro, you've got like 15 years of punching. You know how many years of punching, how many punches that is over the 15 years? You've honed your craft. Isn't that right, Miguel?
Yeah, I agree. But the promising thing, I saw the undercard of the Warrington fight. There were 3 fighters that looked very good British boxing.
Yeah, he liked the look of a few Brits on the undercard. He thinks we've got a good crop of boxers coming through. But they were almost more impressive than the elite end. When you got Warrington Lopez, it did not look like world-class boxing, quite honestly, to me, last night.
And look, amateurs, they were throwing wild shots. They weren't sending
no IQ at all.
Exactly. It was just brute strength, just power. Where I landed the shot. The one that won the title throwing uppercuts from the hip.
From nowhere. No jab. No jab.
No
slip.
Exactly. There was no technique.
Yeah, and that kind of happens when you have no amateur background. You get to the top.
No, you're correct on that. You're
with this stuff that usually would get cut, cut off in the bud kind of thing. It would get nipped in the bud. It wouldn't have a chance to grow. You can't have success like that fighting as an amateur against the depth of talent that used to be in the amateurs. Now, because there's so many other ways to make it, there's so many other ways to make a dollar that boxing is the toughest way to make a dollar, and so you're not going to get as much talent.
Well, I saw a lot of talent on the undercard. There was three British fighters that I liked a lot. Good. They looked like American boxers. They were boxing, counter punching, setting traps.
I know 2 of them in particular that he liked were Junaid Boston, who's a bit of a Nassim Hamed tribute act, but he looked good and he could punch as well, as well as that loose-limbed kind of reflexes style. And also Hopi Price, who's I think it was his 9th pro win, trained by David Caldwell in this country. So Mike was saying, actually, it does look like you've got a kind of a cool kind of
young
talent
crop
melting pot coming up. But generally speaking, in any case, looking at, let's say, Warrington last night, it just seems like the standard of certainly of World Championship professional boxing has declined more than it's improved. You're going to get exceptions, and you have to make your sort, or you have to make your case exhaustive if you're trying to prove a point.
Yeah.
You can't just take one fight from last night. But I do think, we've always said, well, Michael, you seem to actually be in two minds about it, because you've said in some ways things do move on and have evolved, but in other ways you recognise the fact they haven't. You're not clear cut on it, I don't think.
On what? I'm sorry, I missed the
on the evolution of boxing or not.
Yeah. So boxing evolves definitely in the ability for us to see it and get it and actually practice it. But once you know that, once you feel how difficult it is, and once you feel like everyone's scared of an L. L stands for loss, when they think it means you're a loser, when really it should mean you're a learner. You know what I mean? And
exactly. I 100% agree with you, because a lot of fighters don't want to take chances.
Yes.
They, all they want to do is just get the L. They'll fight, and the only way you're going to get good is by fighting hard competition.
Yes.
That's how you learn. And a loss like an L, sometimes. I was just talking about Murray Sutherland. Murray Sutherland had a lot of losses.
Yes.
He fought a lot of great, but then he became a champion. But that guy, just because he had a losing record, when you got into the ring with that guy, you were in a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like a fighter in the 70s and the 80s and back, if their record may be 10-15 or 10-19, even 10-20, but that dude's tested and he's for real.
One of the things you would look back and says, who did he lose to?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, well, you say someone like, do you know what? I was thinking about Murray Sutherland, and guys he fought, like Michael Spinks, like Yaqui Lopez, Tommy Muhammad, Tommy Hearns. There is actually an argument for saying his body of work is better than Chris Eubank Senior's. Maybe not, but you could argue it, even though one guy's...
He fought great fighters.
He fought great fighters.
So we have a question, by the way, which we should engage, because we're trying to ultimately engage an audience with these things rather than please ourselves. Jeff Thompson has asked, can I ask one question, please? Who would we favour out of Beterbiev and Bivol? That's the one fight he'd like to see in the light heavyweight division for all the marbles.
I think that's a great fight. I myself believe Beterbiev at this point now, from what I've seen, would win that fight, and convincingly, I think.
What are you saying?
I haven't seen Beterbiev, but I like Bivol has an excellent jab, and he's huge. Mm-hmm. He's big, so I like Bivol.
Have they not fought each other as amateurs? Or
they could have done. I can't pretend to know that, Silk, but I would favour Bivol, actually. Don't get me wrong, Beterbiev is a beast, and he's incredibly formidable. And you may or may not know that Britain's Anthony Yard is next up for him at some point next year.
I do know that.
I believe it's January, and fair play to Anthony, because he's had tough title shots. He fought Kovalev, albeit a faded Kovalev, a couple of years ago for an attempt to become a world champion, and now he's going in with either the number one, or if not the number one, then the number two guy in the division. I would favour Bivol. I think he's got a little bit more. I didn't think he was special, to be honest with you, when I see him fight Craig Richards, which was actually my first sight seen of him. But I think he is a bit special now. Obviously, I've been influenced by the Canelo performance and his last time out against Benavidez. So I would maybe not so much on the style, so much as my just preference for Bivol, very slightly.
You like him, his style, his personality, and not so much. You're not looking at it from an execution's point of view, from a style.
No, but I think he's a better boxer than Beterbiev. I mean, I know the other guy is hard as nails and relentless pressure, and all the rest of it. But I just think that Bivol perhaps has a little more, and I would favour him on points.
You don't see any defensive tendencies in Beterbiev. You think he's the kind of fighter that can be hit by somebody as proficient physically as.
I don't think he's porous defense wise, but I think Bivol will find him, and I think he'll find it harder to find the other guy than he normally does.
Beterbiev, I think what I like about him is, like, even though he has this incredible power, but he tends to be able to place his punches very well, which, Eastern European fighters have that ability, but the dude's, like, not only is he hard, he's, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's a real hard fighter, but he's he appears to me to be very intelligent. Like, he can calculate and he can adjust and adapt as the fight's going on.
The way he walked Joe Smith Jr. into that KO was very impressive when he let that guy come forward. Because some guys feel like they have to be dominating and backing a guy up, but Beterbiev, who is strong as hell, still let the guy back him up because it suited him. Sometimes we call it take him on a journey. Let him come to you. Let him come. You know all about that because you did that so often in your career.
Right.
So, you know what? I'm a bit excited today because we found all that there is on YouTube of this man's distinguished career. There's 2 fights that he lost to Lopez and to Wankid Meza. But he showed me some stuff he's got on a DVD today. We saw 2 fights that have just been filmed in these kind of little club venues. So they're nice and raw and gritty. So the guy who filmed it, a friend of his, has done a really good job of the filming. And there's Dennis Rappaport talking afterwards and saying this is the best guy in the world at the weight. And Jaime Garza can't hide for us forever. He can run, but he can't hide. And I'm going to get them uploaded, but it just reminded me about your counterpunching and ability to let a guy come to you so you could take advantage of his mistakes. And
Dennis is a showman. Dennis Rappaport comes in. Yeah, it was some classic Dennis Rappaport.
Wow. I'd love to see those fights. I can't wait for you to put them up.
He's given me, he's got 2 copies, so he's given one to me. If I can get it sorted in a media file while I'm still in San Antonio, I will. If not, it's coming back to London with me. Beautiful. And there will be more of this man's legacy in the public domain before I'm through.
Go. I love it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, of course, baby. You're the man. You are the man. Thank you. I admire you. I admire you so much. I've been a fan. Your name, your family name. I mean, even before everything went down, man, you were the one. So,
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Very nice for you to say.
And that feels like a nice ending. You've actually excelled yourself tonight, Silk, because usually you're so kind of gregarious and sort of loquacious that if there is a problem, it's in getting you to close. But can I assume that that's what you've done on this occasion, sir?
I guess I didn't mean to. That was by accident. I mean, it was by accident. It was a good close, but it was all 100%. You know what I mean? It's like I just admire this man sitting beside you. I really do. I'm fortunate that I'm of the generation that I've been able to appreciate someone with his talent. So I'm sort of beside myself when I, sit back and I we're talking to a legend, really. We're talking to a legend, somebody who today would be one of those dominant fighters. And
I'm not talking to a legend on StreamYard or Zoom. I'm sitting with him here. That's super special to me. So,
what's the weather like over there? It looks beautiful.
It's nice, it's nice. So now he's trying to drag it out again. It's nice. It's pleasantly sunny. I've got to say, it's much better in London. I know it's snowing, so I feel for any of my friends who are watching at home, like the Jeff Thompson, Danny Graham, who I didn't manage to acknowledge a little bit earlier. I hear that it is freezing and -5 in London. I hear it's snowing. I will be back there next week for episode 10 of Sugar and the Silk with this man and another illustrious guest, no doubt. We are on the case. Thanks to Ace Podcast Nation for making this possible. Show your support. Patreon, likewise. In the meantime, let's try
to do this, Ben. I know that was a beautiful sign off. I'm sorry. I always have something extra to say.
Go on.
But I just wanted to say, like, if boxing is going to get better, if fighters go with the intent, my intent is for the fight not to go the distance. My intent is to stop you. And the judges are there just in case the fight does go the distance. That's the way boxing should be. And that's something that had always been on my mind. I hadn't found the words to say it, but if that's the intent, the fight's scheduled to go 10 rounds and then there's going to be a decision. But my intent is for the fight not to go 10 rounds.
How would you feel about no decisions again? You remember the newspaper decisions thing where they couldn't render a decision in certain states because of the illegality around gambling laws and things like that. So what they did, if a guy didn't stop, if nobody stopped anybody, then they would have a consensus view in the newspapers, but they would not have an official decision. Would you be in favor of any kind of return to that?
No, I mean, I think that there should be a decision. There is a clear winner and a clear loser, but but both fighters have to be trying 100% their hardest in order to win a fight.
Do you know what Keith Thurman said? He
What's
said
that?
back when he was undefeated, Keith Thurman several years ago said, "It really kills me to think that 2 of my fights went the distance, that 2 of my wins are by decision." He goes, "I don't really see how it can happen." He goes, "If you're really throwing down and really going for it, I don't see how you can go the distance." That was it.
Exactly.
Which is a bit like what you're suggesting to me, but
and that's that's when the fans are getting their money's worth, and I think that's when the business of boxing is going to grow and benefit. That's when it's going to be flourishing.
So you're going to say it's all about the KO, yeah?
No, it's all about the intent. I think if a fighter's intent, like so the fight last night, and I fought in reverse too. You know what I mean? But you know, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I fought in reverse and I fought as a counter puncher. But my intent when I punched was never to it was always to hurt an individual, not to score points. Like the intent was to end the fight, always 100%, no matter what. I'd always wanted the KO. I always and you have to work towards that. And you
down with that?
Yes and no, because the only reason why is because when you look for one of the rules I learned is small. If you go look for the knockout, you're gonna get knocked out yourself.
Yeah, there is that ability, but if you have the defensive capacity,
exactly. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yes, but what I'm saying is, and I know what you're trying to say. What the fighters need to do is to take risk. Yes. You know, a lot of fighters are not taking risks. They like when I fought Lopez, they box. They rather run and survive than try to win. Try to take the chances. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Try. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because where the saying goes, no guts, no glory. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely, 100%. And I think once we get that down and we do certain things like if you hold in a fight and you haven't been hit, you should have a point taken away. I mean, if I were ahead of a league or whatever they have these things right now, these are some of the new rules I would be implementing. Like, there's no holding in a fight. If you're going to hold and wrestle and grab a person, I'm taking a point away immediately.
Well, let me tell you this. In the rule book of boxing, is holding a foul?
I don't think
holding is a foul. Holding is a foul.
I'm thinking of the British Boxing Board of Control rules, which they give us license holders every year. They update the new rules. They're usually the same as the old rules, but there might be the old modification. But I don't know if it is. I think excessive holding is a foul. Whether the mere fact of clinching and tying a guy up is a foul as soon as you do it, I don't know. But you're suggesting it should be, Michael.
Immediately is that as soon as you hook a man's arm when you're on the inside, right away, I'm stopping you. I give you one warning second. I'm taking a point.
Do you know Joe Frazier?
That's not a bad idea. That's pretty. I like that.
You know, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier during Ali's exile, they had a taped conversation in a car. They were going from Philadelphia, I believe, where Ali was living at the time. He was living in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and Frazier was obviously famously lived in Philly for most of his life. And Ali said, "I'm writing a book. I'm writing an autobiography, and I want you to be a part of it." This was when he didn't know if he was going to be exiled forever and whether he'd ever come back to the ring. Right in 1960, he didn't know that yet. It was about 69, and Frazier had an appointment in New York, so he said, "Okay, I'll drive you. Then we'll go together and we'll put the tape on and let's rep." You know. Yeah. And they were talking about how a fight between the two of them will go. And Ali was saying, "There's no way you can avoid my jab, or you'll be able to avoid my right cross or my left hook, or whatever he was saying." He said, "Unless, of course, you hold me," which is a bit rich, him saying that, you know, the way to make things played out. But Frazier was so indignant, he nearly let go of the will. He said, "I ain't never held on to a man in 26 fights." Because that's what he had. So he said, "I ain't never held on to a man in 26 fights. Not ever."
Exactly.
And you know he wouldn't, you know.
No, so, Joe would not. Never. Even he get dropped and he's hurt and he wouldn't hold. He wouldn't clinch. He's like trying to move his head.
That's what he did. And like when he got decked twice by Oscar Bonavina in one of their fights in the 60s. Yeah. And when they mentioned it to him, like, you know, whether that was a cause for concern, he said, "Well, I always said if a little man hits you on the chin, you're going to go down. But the question of how you're going to react when you get back up." And that was it. You know? So would boxing be in a better shape if everybody was like smoking Joe Frazier in terms of mindset?
Absolutely.
But I agree with you. Holding has been a lot of fighters hold. That's all they do is hold.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. You know what I mean? I think, you know, if you hold, you know what I mean, one time, you know what I mean, like I said, one warning, and now you take a point. I think it would make boxing better.
It would make infinitely
Because a lot of
more
guys, you'd be
interesting.
surprised, a lot of guys use holding as a strategy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Klitschko,
guys that are in fighters,
Yeah.
guys that are
Vladimir
in
Klitschko's
fighters.
very long heavyweight reign was defined as jab and grab by some people.
Yeah,
Who's that, sorry?
the heavyweights, you know what I mean?
Second,
Who was jab and grab?
Vladimir Klitschko.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. He had 8 arms, that dude. When he got inside, it was an issue.
Yeah, a jab and hold.
And that's not good enough, is it? You're supposed to excel at all the distances, all the defensive mode. That's being a complete fighter. That should be the aim for any coach who's molding a young fighter. You want to make him a complete fighter. And if you don't have that aim, why not?
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I'm sorry to extend this past your.
You close, Michael. Go on. You can do this. This is your audition for I don't know what for the podcast, I guess. For your continued presence on this show. You close it for me. Go on. Show me how.
I have you. I'm only good with the rehearsed with rehearsed lines, but I love our conversation as usual on Sugar and Silk and Miguel. Ayala, it was great having you on with us again. We love the participation of people. Even more, want us to ask us questions. Please come through. Join us again next week on Sugar and Silk Volume. Was it 10? Volume 10?
9, I think. But who's counting? That'll do.
Yeah. Goodbye. Thanks.
Be lucky. Thanks all.